The 2020 Democratic presidential nominating contest is well underway. Less than 2 years out from Election Day, the group of candidates vying for their party's nomination is among the largest and most diverse in U.S. history. Just as interesting as the men and women running for president, however, are the cars they've had before and during their race for the White House. Since 1909, every single presidential candidate has not only owned a car that reflected their personality, but many of these vehicles continue to be just as relevant as the candidates that drove them. If we held elections based on the cars our candidates drove, we probably have a much different history. Love them or hate them, a 2020 Democratic presidential candidate has personally driven all of the unique cars on this list. So without further ado, let's discuss each Democratic presidential candidate's favorite car. Senator Bernie Sanders announced his presidential run on February 19th. He was elected mayor of Burlington, Vermont in 1981 by a margin of just 3 votes, won a seat in Congress in 1990, and was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2006, where he remains today the longest-serving independent senator in U.S. history. Bernie has a long history with cars as well. When Bernie first ran for Congress 31 years ago, his official campaign vehicle was a Yugo GV, a car that was built by state-owned Zastava Motors in the communist country of Yugoslavia. The GV, standing for Great Value, was billed as America's cheapest new car, but unfortunately the Yugo was a flop when it was introduced to the US markets in 1985. The car broke down often, enough that it remains the ultimate punchline about automotive failure. These days, Bernie spends a fair amount of time traveling in a black-on-black Chevy Suburban SUV, but occasionally he breaks free for something a little more economical. During his first year as US Senator, Sanders showed up to a news conference in a car that had been converted into a plug-in hybrid, and later became known as a Toyota Prius. On his free time, he personally drives a Lincoln Town Car SUV. Bernie has also inspired some interesting vehicles as well, like this Tesla Model S that's been dubbed the Burn Machine. The car's owner, Paul Sasso, has it wrapped, racing style, in Bernie Sanders' baby blue, the color of the Democratic presidential candidate's campaign t-shirts. During his 8 terms in Congress, Democratic presidential candidate Tim Ryan of Ohio has been a vocal backer of union labor and renewable energy. On the renewable energy front, the congressman had the opportunity to check out a model of the world's first soon-to-be mass-produced 3D printed car, the LM3D Swim. This road-ready 3D printed vehicle has an interesting design, but it's also keeping up with the smart car frontier. Using connected vehicle technology, engineers at Local Motors and IBM developed enhancements enabling vehicle interaction with both the driver and its outside environment, enhancing safety and boosting traffic efficiency. Washington State Governor and veteran Congress member Jay Inslee threw his hat into the ring on March 1st on a platform of environmental protection and stopping climate change. Naturally, then, he's a big fan of electric vehicles and has been seen driving countless models, including a Tesla Model X, a Chevy Volt, a Toyota Mirai, one of the first hydrogen fuel cell cars sold in the US, and the electric BMW i3. When he's not being driven in a Chevy Suburban, he personally drives his electric Chevy Bolt, an all-electric vehicle offering up to 238 miles of pure electric range on a full charge. The former Texas U.S. representative and El Paso city councilman, tech company founder, and one-time punk rocker Beto ORourke announced his run for president on July 9th. The former congressman is an avid car enthusiast and definitely a fan of pickup trucks. His favorite is his Toyota Tundra SRS. With its beefy suspension, new skid plate, and forged BBS wheels, his pickup truck is capable of showing Texas backroads who's boss. His love for pickup trucks came from his father, Beto ORourke, who owns a 1974 Toyota FJ40 Land Cruiser, a lumbering 2-door model famed for its ruggedness and reliability. The 4x4 gained a hit of notoriety when his father became El Paso County Judge. West Virginia State Senator Richard Ojeda announced his presidential run on November 11, 2018, and was the second Democrat to announce his campaign for the 2020 U.S. presidential election. As no incumbent state legislator has ever mounted a serious bid for the presidency, Ojeda was considered a long shot and an underdog candidate. Yet the state senator's car collection is far more interesting. His daily driver is a TRD off-road Toyota 4Runner. This compact, later mid-sized sport utility vehicle has been sold worldwide since 1984. Powered by a 4-liter V6, the TRD Off-Road Edition comes with a rugged roof rack and a 1/4-inch thick aluminum front skid plate that toughen things up underneath. The truck's lightweight 17-inch matte black alloy wheels are wrapped in 32-inch Nitto Grappler all-terrain tires. Richard Ojeda's second second car is a Jeep Wrangler. During his race for the presidency, he put over 50,000 miles on it, campaigning across country. Andrew Yang, a former tech entrepreneur who started a nonprofit to promote startups, entered the race on November 6, 2018, on essentially one issue: protecting Americans from job-stealing robots. While campaigning, he's usually driven around in a Chevy Suburban, but he also likes his cars imported, as he recently tweeted that he drove back in a Subaru from a campaign event in New Hampshire. And when he's not campaigning, he enjoys snowmobiling. Joe Biden, who entered the 2020 race on April 25th, was Obama's vice president and right-hand man. Formerly a used car salesman, Vice President Biden has a natural passion for cars. His first vehicle was a 1951 Studebaker, a car that was both owned by President Jimmy Carter and George Bush Sr. From there, he purchased a 1952 Plymouth Cranbrook convertible. This car was powered by a 217 cubic inch flathead six-cylinder engine, and the vice president recalled that it was one of his favorites. Biden's next car was a 1956 Chevy Bel Air. The classic car's 4.3-liter V8 featured a modern overhead high-valve compression ratio design that was so good that it remained in production for many decades. The vice president's least favorite car was his Mercedes 190 SL that he purchased while attending the University of Delaware. Buying the car with over 100,000 miles, he often had problems with the car's carburetor. The vice president's all-time favorite car, and one that he still owns today, is his 1967 Greenwood Green Corvette Stingray. This classic beauty came equipped with a 327 cubic inch small block V8, producing 350 horsepower with a real axle ratio that really gets up and goes. The 67 Corvette was a wedding gift from his father, and years later his sons had the engine rebuilt. Before he left public office, Biden was able to secure permission from the Secret Service to drive his Stingray during an episode of Jay Leno's Garage. And by driving, we mean doing burnouts and drag racing former Secretary of State Colin Powell, who was also driving a 2016 C7 Corvette. That's a gift not often bestowed upon a sitting VP, who's normally restricted from driving until at least 6 months after he leaves office. Elizabeth Warren, a former Harvard Law professor that became a household name as a U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, entered the race on February 9, 2019. Growing up, her parents drove an Oldsmobile Super 88, powered by a 394 cubic inch rocket V8, making 315 horsepower. While on the campaign trail, the senator prefers an SUV, particularly a Ford Escape Hybrid. Senator Warren has a taste for trucks as well, most notably a Dodge Ram that she was seen driving during her 2016 Senate campaign. The Ram 1500 is powered by a 5.7-liter V8 Hemi, producing 395 horsepower and 410 pound-feet of torque. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio announced his entrance into the ring on May 15th on Good Morning America. Unfortunately, being the tallest mayor in New York City's history, standing at 6 foot 5 inches has its shortcomings, particularly while driving. Mayor de Blasio's administration learned that recently, as it searched for smaller, eco-friendly cars to replace his current fleet of larger Chevy Tahoe hybrid SUVs. Most hybrid vehicles don't have the space to accommodate the politician's 6 foot 5 inch frame. Hopefully, New York's mayor can find something more fitting. Stepping into the race on January 21st, California Senator Kamala Harris was a prosecutor in Oakland, California, San Francisco District Attorney, and finally California's Attorney General before winning her Senate seat. The senator has an interesting taste when it comes to cars. During campaign events, she's been seen driving in a 1969 Ford Mustang, a classic car owned by both Presidents Gerald Ford and Bill Clinton. She's also been seen in a Cadillac Escalade. The luxury SUV 6.2-liter V8 engine, producing 420 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque, offers technologies such as continuous variable valve timing, direct injection, and active fuel management, along with a 10-speed automatic transmission that delivers near instantaneous shifts for smooth acceleration and optimal performance. Billionaire philanthropist Tom Steyer announced his run for president on July 9th. Steyer, who amassed a net worth of $1.6 billion through his hedge fund, Furlong Capital, has morphed into an environmental activist in recent years. As far as billionaires go, Steyer doesn't conform to the type, as he drives an outdated Honda Accord hybrid. Eric Swalwell, a 3-term U.S. representative from Northern California, launched his bid for the presidency on on Stephen Colbert's Late Show on April 8th. When not on Capitol Hill, he drives a Toyota Camry. Joe Sestak, a retired Navy Vice Admiral, former congressman, and director for defense policy on the National Security Council under President Bill Clinton, threw his hat into the ring on June 22nd. Surprisingly, the Vice Admiral's favorite car is a Toyota Prius. Wayne Messam, the mayor of Miramar, Florida, and a construction company owner, launched his campaign on March 28th and is running on a platform of, quote, restoring promise to America. During his presidential run, the Florida mayor has been seen driving a Chevy Malibu hybrid. Geologist and businessman John Hickenlooper served 2 terms as Denver mayor before being elected governor of Colorado in 2010. He's also a big supporter of electric vehicles, as he recently signed an executive order committing his state to the adoption of low-emission vehicle standards. John also likes his Corvettes. In 2015, he test drove a driverless C7 Corvette. The high-powered sports car was driven by the governor via a baseball cap, loaded with sensors connected to dashboard-mounted infrared cameras, which detect head movements to steer the car. The governor used his breath to accelerate and brake the Corvette by inhaling or blowing into a tube attached to a pressure sensor. Mike Gravel, the former U.S. Senator from Alaska, jumped into the race on April 8th, and perhaps has the most interesting history with cars. After he graduated from Columbia University in 1956, he moved to New York City flat broke. His first job in the Big Apple was driving a taxi cab. While on the job, he drove a 1950 Checker cab, manufactured by Checker Motors. This car was used by the majority of taxi cab companies in New York City. The cab came with massive rear doors, roomy seats, and trunks, and was powered by the well-known Continental inline 6-cylinder engine. John Delaney, a former congressman from Maryland, started 2 lending companies before running for office in 2012, and was also the very first Democrat to announce his presidential run back in July 2017. John's favorite car is his dad's Dodge Ram 1500. When he passed away a few years ago, John got his dad's last truck, a Dodge Ram. The former congressman drove it over 1,300 miles during his campaign and claims it's a great reminder of why he's running for president. Pete Buttigieg, a Democratic mayor of South Bend, presented a progressive message geared towards millennials during his run announcement on January 23rd. Both an Afghanistan war veteran and former consultant, he was South Bend's youngest mayor in recorded history. His favorite car is a Chevy Malibu. Well guys, those are every single 2020 Democratic presidential candidate's favorite car. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. Also, if you like what you see at the channel, subscribe and put post notifications on. You could also follow the channel on Instagram at Modern Muscle YT. I'm Jeff for Modern Muscle, and I'll see ya next time.